Very not Novartis-like, I come here without slides. I love this building. It's interesting. Those of you who know the campus, we have 45 buildings, 18 that are according to the novel master plan that was signed off in 2001. Every other building is actually a research facility. So when people hear headquarters, they think about positions such as mine or HR and finance and all of that. But no, there's 2,500 researchers still on the soil here. Every building has an owner, a department that owns the building. And this is the only in 45 buildings that is owned by communications. So we decide what's happening in here, and that is absolutely beautiful because that's what it is. It's so far, you know, if you work in comms, you have social media, that's basically post and pray, or you work with journalists where I tell the story and then I hope that the journalist got what I wrote and then you as a reader would then read. But this is the first place where we, and quite literally in the only shape, which is the round shape that does no hierarchy, can on eye level explain what we do and why it matters. When Sarah approached me for a little speech, I had no idea about the format, so apologies for my ignorance. I felt completely uneasy, and there is something Baselerish about my unease. The Baselers among you will understand that pride and Basel is not a good fit. We don't use the word pride lightly at all. We like to be humble, we like to be modest, that is culturally, but even there is nuances within Switzerland. And Basel is very particular there. I think we have this attitude where we're almost like, we think that if we celebrate the expected, we will lose ambition, right? So we have very high ambitions and we never say pride. So I felt uneasy. By the way, since we opened this building, there's a lot of these competitions. They approach us, don't you want to file for a prize, the red dot, the this dot, the something, whatever prize? And I was like, no, we're not, that's not in style of the building. We created this building to make sure that people have a possibility to come here and understand what as an industry we do and why it matters. And to be very frank, I mean, one could do a pride speech and say, isn't it great, 100,000 people already came here and it's really accepted. We didn't know what happens when Big Pharma opens up to the city, but they actually come, isn't that fantastic? I think it's a little bit a different story. I think in a city where 800 companies work in the space of life sciences, where we employ as an industry 30,000 people, it was damn time to create a place where you can see what that industry does. In Switzerland, we are a direct democracy. If we don't take people with us on the journey, they will not understand. Some years back, this must have been a very different but also exciting site where it was smoky and rattling and loud. Now we talk about gene editing, nuclear medicine, all of these things that, you know, science fiction has become science fact, but where do you learn about this? So this is the ambition of this house. We have small pitch from my side, really cool events that we call Behind the Science, where, for example, in the week of the Nobel Prize winners, we invite experts to translate now what that means for me, Nelly, the layman. So we really try to be pop sciencey and not afraid of dumbing down content just to provoke the curiosity. But Sarah already gave my pitch away, so I'm not talking about the pride of this project, but I'm talking about the lack of pride in Basel. So I was asked by the life sciences cluster of the commercial chamber here in Basel to give a speech somewhere. And in preparation there, I was doing the following. I consulted Google and ChatGPT to learn about Basel with the lens of someone who has never heard about Basel. Small example, when we talk about attracting the best talent, the best sciences to our sites, we're not in competition with Roche. We're in competition with San Francisco. That's a side topic, right? So I was asking ChatGPT, give me the 10 most exciting things about Basel. And you will not believe it, the very obvious ones come first. We're known for museums, we're known for great art collections, we're known for architecture, but then even Fasnacht and the bridges and some other things came before the industry of life sciences. There's some kind of uneasiness with being proud of the medical advancements. And then I remembered this small little booklet that I adore. It's again in its format, it's for the bibliophile among us. It's very humble, it's very modest, but it tells stories of how Basel has influenced the world. There are more stories than scientific stories, but I was thinking along those lines, I'll give you a tour through some of the advancements that I think we should be really proud of. So with that, as we are in a comms channel, and as so many of you have not yet seen the magic, which is actually happening in the first floor, I will take you all on a tour. Follow me. Those of you who do not have to run away afterwards at 9 o'clock, you're warmly invited to stay, grab a headset and have a look at the full exhibition. So we've already passed 2 chapters, like it's didactically set up. So we start with the patient stories and the basal body functions. We then learn what happens in the 12 to 15 years that it takes to develop a drug. Here we're in the history part, and then there's a very interesting future part. And the whole thing, you have to imagine, there is a digital twin of this actual space, and it's an immersive experience. So you wear a headset, and then basically it's all chopped up in zones. At the moment you stand in the right position, you will be triangulated. We don't know who you are, but we at all times know what you are, where you are, and how you behave in the room, which is interesting from a comms perspective to get all of this data and feedback of what is interesting for people. But basically it's 6 hours of content in total, so don't have the ambition, but if you have a bit of extra time and want to get the experience, I encourage you. Here, deliberately, we're in the history part, and building on my pitch before of why I think we should be prouder, this is an installation. It's called the Time Scanner, so I can take an old map and hover over a new map, and every time I hit one of the points of interest, I can learn about it, again, through an audio story. So we can travel from 1880 to 1950 to 2020. And what's interesting, I just shared with my first boss, Graham, that I was in Hyderabad, and Hyderabad today is likely what Basel was in 1880. So imagine you were born in 1880, and then let's go to Klebeck, for example. Just focus on the map. On your 70th birthday, this is what the city would have looked like 70 years later. Everything was booming. And I don't want to do disjustice to art, culture, and architecture. I love them all alike, but I think we over-index on the fruits, and we talk too little about the roots, because the wealth of Basel clearly stems from this industry. Now, I have 10 moments of pride. Obviously, we have to swing over to St. Johann and the beautiful campus. But I don't want to talk about, I could talk about campus for hours, but I want to talk about the fact that we did not have a Kodak moment in Basel. On this very soil, this was the headquarters of former Sandoz, and then at the merger in 96, when they merged with Ciba Geigy and the other river banks, this was basically made the home of the new created Novartis. 200 years of history on this very Sandoz soil. Only roughly 100 of those, though, in the pharmaceutical industry. Everything before was dye stuff. And it is a war success story. So before World War I, Germany was the biggest supplier of dyes for the textile industry, and then overnight, when it was no longer opportune to buy colors in Germany. Basel was ready to build up and ramp up with everything in colors. And then from these chemical processes came the chemical processes that were the foundation for the pharmaceutical industry. So I think we should be proud of the transition that we made and that we didn't sort of lose momentum there. Now, by the way, in '96, there were 18 trees on Very campus. Campus is 30 soccer fields in size. Now we have roughly 2,000 trees. So that's another pride story. So I have a top 10 list. It's neither in a scientific nor in a chronological order, but this was the first, the industry and campus. The second is Sandy Moon. Who knows about Sandy Moon? It's an amazing story. It's an immune suppressant that actually allowed for organs not to be rejected when transplanted. So it's like the advancement in organ transplantation, Sandy Moon, because it was developed by Sandoz. And it's such a great story because there's this one researcher who always, when he traveled privately, would bring soil samples home. And there's soil samples with a fungi from Norway that here in the lab proved to be a success story. Love those stories. Who knows about the Swiss TPH? They just moved headquarters. The story about Gigi and his advancements, you can listen to them here. It's a very interesting story because the Swiss Tropical Institute was founded in '43 during war times. And it was in Switzerland where the government was really worried about massive job losses, and they invested into research projects. And Gigi had the idea to found this tropical institute. And I think it's the only tropical institute in Europe that does not have any colonial connection. And from the beginning, this was around, oh, maybe you can correct.
There's hardly anything in Basel that doesn't have any colonial connection.
Yeah, okay,
Anyway, so.
okay. That is a fair point taken. But this story is interesting. From the beginning, it was all about researching on the parasites, all about global health services and global health and education. And I was privileged to visit one of the former sites there in Ifakara, where Novartis still today has a connection in Tanzania. And I was completely taken by surprise to every now and then see either a Swiss flag or even a Basler Stab in a building. So from Basel to the world, you're somewhere in Africa where you have to land with a Cessna caravan because there is no other transportation, and you see a Basler Stab. Reason to be proud. Ooh, maybe my favorite, 7 is also a great number, LSD. LSD was discovered by chance, but on this very soil. Those of you familiar with campus, I identified it must have been roughly where this 20-degree angle Tadao Ando stands today. Again, a research building. A couple of things to mention about this. I think with all the Woodstock stories and whatever followed, it's completely underestimated what Hoffman proved with his self-test back in the days. In an essence, I'm not a scientist, don't quote me on that, but I believe that in an essence, he proved that what's happening up here is not electrical, but chemical. So it's the foundation of the modern psychopharmacology. And by the way, another reason to be proud of, and we have him, I believe it's the 24th of October for Behind the Science here, Professor Liechti will come and talk about LSD. Basel is the only place in the world that never stopped researching on LSD, and we're very close before an absolute, I think, novel era in treating depression, in microdosage, etc. Interesting story. Who knows the glue araldite? Is that the right way to araldite? Okay. We have a replica of the Apollo 1 helmet as a symbol that out of it took many inventions to get the man on the moon, but 2 are from Basel, and one was araldite because it's a heat-resistant glue that was actually instrumental in the capsule to shield the people inside the capsule when they return on Earth. The other, I don't remember how the product is called, but it's the UV protective chemical in the shield that was developed by former company Ciba. So there's a Geigy and a Ciba product that went to the moon, 1960. Number 5, Thaddäus Rechstein. Does anybody know Thaddäus Rechstein? The only Uni-Basel affiliated, or the first who got the Nobel Prize. He was the first person to entirely make a total synthesis of vitamin C. I think there's this fun pun where they say Reichstein, Stein, Reich, because he was clever enough to let Roche have a commercial success with it, but keep the patent. Clever man that was. In 1950, he got the Nobel Prize for chemistry, but not for vitamin C. It was for his work on cortisol. And I have, from this little booklet, I have a tiny quote from his speech in Stockholm when he addressed at the banquet. It says, "It goes without saying that I'm enormously happy that our chemical research has proven useful for medicine, but I cannot claim the credit for it. You will surely understand that I have the feeling of being incredibly spoiled today by fate and by you." He's Polish by background, but I think he spent enough time in Basel so that this modesty and humbleness that I talked about really shows in his address. It is known as one of the most personable and humble laureate speeches ever given in Stockholm. Then number 4, calcium. Calcium Sondo. It's the first calcium therapy, also by the company Solno. It's probably the most known product still produced today and dates back to 1929. Then we have a little story about Auguste Antoine Picard, born in Basel, 18 something. 1884. He's the dad of Jacques and Bertrand. What a family of geniuses. And they all have this itch to just do very crazy things. He was the first person in the stratosphere. Absolutely crazy. A Basler, a story to be proud of. And then we have, number 2 is the story of DNA. Friedrich Miescher. Now we know the Friedrich Miescher Institute. He was a Basler, and he did his research on DNA, and that was actually before the double helix was then sort of drawn, but he was on that. Not very glamorous. Science sometimes is not very glamorous. What's the English word for eitel? The yellow... Pus. Ooh. Not nice, but he was working with bandages and identifying and finding this nuclei. So he was actually on it. I think maybe a roundabout in Basel could be a double helix, just to remember Friedrich Miescher. And another story is the Friedrich Miescher Institute will move on campus in first quarter of next year to bring more scientists together. So the place is getting geekier and geekier. And then we are with my absolute favorite. Okay, there is some sort of hierarchy, isn't it? We go over there. Vesalius. I take you back on a travel to 1543. 1543. This guy has changed the practice of anatomy. He was crazy enough to be the first one to actually work with cutting up corpses. What do you call that? The cadavers. You say that as well with humans? Ooh. So he not only looked at them, he portrayed them. And he carved in, I believe it's pear wood, He made these absolute beautiful drawings that are then were then printed. Where were they printed? In Basel. So this is maybe in medical history the most important book, The Fabric of the Human Body. And it's amazing because he's an anatomist and an artist. So it's a beautiful example of what happens when art and science come together. And just because of his accuracy, could then medicine learn about how the body really works. Proportions before Vesalius looked very, very differently. What I absolutely love, there's the book downstairs and you can flick through it, is the little details that he added that are of absolutely no help to the anatomy. But you'll find a little church or a little tree or a little landscape, and it's really, it's completely art. Fun fact with Vesalius, so he packed all those wood blocks that were then the printing thing, send it to Switzerland from Italy in 1543, so with horses, literally. And then he followed that party because he wanted to be here to oversee the printing. Now, while he was here anyway, why not dissect another body? So there was this thief that was sentenced to death, and he was given his corpse, and he did a lecture at the Basel Anatomy Faculty. This very corpse is still available for show in the Anatomy Museum. So if you don't have plans for the weekend, you can actually do a Vesalius tour in Basel. So you might want to start by looking at this corpse. Then you could go to the Pharmacy History Museum in town where you see the actual original book. And then you can come here to flick through the new book that actually got Mrs. Cargo the Doctorate of Honorary 2 years ago at the Dies Academicus for her work, and they worked for 10 years to get that novel edition of the book. And you can come here and listen to the story. It's my recommendation for the weekend plans. With that, it's 9:01. Thank you very much. We go back to the coffee.
Shall we make the Q&A right here? Do you have questions? You can ask them now.
I hope I can answer them. If not, I might have a joker.
Hi. Not to get me wrong, I do believe that the city of Basel can be proud of the historical achievements that they've had over the centuries. But how should we, as people, as individuals, be proud of things that we actually did not take part in?
That's
I mean, it's an honest question. I'm not trying to trick you.
No.
I'm trying to figure out how we can be also pride of this feeling of pride that we should have in the city of Basel.
I can only speak from a very personal perspective. Like, I have challenges being proud of achievements that I do. I find it very easy to celebrate other people's achievements that are alive. So I'm actually proud to be a Basler, and I'm proud about the energy of this ecosystem and the fact that we've also always given the political framework and the creativity needed for the space. I think there's more to say. It's not like celebrating the individuals, but those individuals have been fortunate enough to be in a soil and an ecosystem that allows for this success. I think it's more the proud there, but that's a very personal perspective.
Well, let me add something. I mean, you can always be proud of something you didn't do yourself. I mean, you can be proud of belonging to a family. That's not your achievement or something. So you can always be proud of something that is not done by you, but you're kind of part of it.
But is that justified to be called pride in that sense? It comes close to nationalism.
Well, that's now it's getting
Yeah. No, that's really. I'm thinking. Take it a level lighter. Is like there are family members who haven't been here yet, and they say like, "Oh, we're traveling here. Can you give us a tour?" So, what are the milestones that you share? What would you sort of? I also struggle with the word pride. I find it a challenging word, but you said cool things about the city. You can just rephrase it.
Maybe a question. I was pleasantly surprised by the title, but also the context in which you place it. Considering, let's say, on a global scale, pride has become very associated with
Yeah.
as it was introduced. How do those associations come to be, or what made you choose the topic in the way that you did it today?
Well, the topic has been chosen by us, first of all.
By the chapter.
And then we came, by the chapter. Actually, New York is,
Yeah.
maybe for the ones who haven't been here before,
Yeah.
we get the topics 1 year ahead, and in
Yeah.
November it's us who gives it
Okay.
for the whole world. So we get them, and then we need to see, okay, what are we going to do with it? And then it was our idea to ask Nelly, not hers, to take pride.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was very interesting,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but also how you position the context of.
Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned at Museumnacht was nowhere in this space will you see the brand Novartis, right? Which was a very deliberate comms choice, I think, that was made. With branding changes and branding being so important, how does pride and branding relate to that choice?
It's maybe the one thing I'm personally proud of in the project, because it took some fighting, right? There obviously, and for good reasons, also people at Novartis that think it's a missed opportunity if you don't put the logo and the name on it. But I think in the meantime, they all agreed that it was the right choice. Because what we wanted to do is back to saying there's 800 companies in the life sciences sector. This is a sector relevant exhibition. And with the exception of the history part, where we talk about milestones that happened with the company from our company archives, everything else is Novartis agnostic in didactic, right? We have research teams from Roche who come here, and we have families from the competition that come here. They're like, look, this is where how mom and dad work. So yeah, and I think but that was a very deliberate comms decision.
The reverse pride.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, seriously, it doesn't take a lot to think like it's even stronger, right? You leave and you know you're here, it's prox to campus. Obviously, you know who paid for it, right? It's not like, there's no need to be a megaphone.
How does the opening of the campus, because it was closed for a long time, relate to that story?
I'm totally on the wire here. No. I think it's interesting because I jumped on this role for site communications just before both of the projects happened, and they were almost like sold as one project, and retrofitted, they go hand in hand. But as you can imagine, an exhibition like this, that took 6 years of planning. And in the beginning, it was actually planned to say like, well, we already have 45 buildings. We don't need to build an exhibition center. Let's just find some space on campus, until the realization came about that if we really mean it to bring industry and society closer together, there should be a physical proximity, and it deserves its own building. Plus, we don't just want to have an exhibition where we take people by the hand, but there should be the space for conversation. A coffee is maybe the most important piece in this building is the coffee machine, right? So that happened in April last year, and then in October we opened campus. And I have the exact same attitude to campus opening as I have to this exhibition. It was about time, right? It's like we have 9 Pritzker winning architects here. We have art, we have beautiful landscape. Offering this space to the public is just the right thing to do. And I think from a business perspective, what it really helped is likely the realization that probably the biggest risk to a company like ours is a cyber attack and not a physical theft, right? So that the whole opening up, and it's also a consequence of Vasna Azimhan, the CEO, who really works on this cultural change, which is not something that you switch in 1 or 2 years, but that takes time.
Okay, I think we need to stop here. You can always go and ask Nelly later. I hope you're with us for another 15 minutes or so, or even more. And then you can go back if you like, or stroll around here. What I want you to tell you here is everything wouldn't be possible, as Sarah already mentioned, if we hadn't these sponsors, even the local ones. This is Niels Franke Photography, who does the video today. Timo. Then we have Timo Rubolo, he already left, he did the photos. Then we have Alles Gesagt, where is Andrea, the company of Andrea, there in the back. She always cares for newsletters. Then it was Sarah who did the texting in this newsletter. Usually it's Andrea. Sarah already left as well, she went to Köln. Then it's my own company, it's PlaySpace, you heard before. And then we have London Tea, who sponsored the tea, if you took one. Mm-hmm. Then we have the, he has no company. Well, he works for one who's sponsoring sometimes. It's eBay with Dominique. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, he does the stories. And then we have, it's not easy if you don't have the slides, huh? We have plenty of sponsors. And then, it's the Pavillon Nelly, Novartis. Thank you so much. And especially Isabelle Gauthier, she's not here with us, but she's been around all the time, and she realized everything here on the spot, that you have your coffee at the right time. We have the screen, and Isabelle is somewhere, I think downstairs. Yeah. Now, did I forget anybody else? Hopefully not. Okay. Well, that's it. You can go back, take a coffee, stroll around here, and talk to everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.